Welcome all and Happy New Year. Today we are going to be looking at a Filmverse recipe based on the 50D stock. This is a modern variation of the look that inspired many films in the 20th century. While organic film can be quite complex, we'll see if pulling the right levers in Filmverse helps achieve a similar look and aesthetic. Before we begin, a couple quick things. First, after a lot of positive feedback from the DI and DP community, you'll notice that Filmverse licenses have officially moved away from the subscription model. If you've been considering upgrading your tools to include Filmverse, there is a New Year's discount running right now that will reduce the lifetime price by 20%. Finally, like always, the recipe we will talk about today can be found in the Discord chats in the Filmverse recipe channel in a power grade format. All right, let's get into it. Here we are in the color page with the footage we're working on today. Let's dive in. First, we're going to drop the DCTL effect onto our node and select Filmverse Arsenal. Let's configure the input settings. We need to tell the plugin that this was shot on the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera with Blackmagic's wide gamut. So select the input gamut and choose Blackmagic wide gamut and the input gamma to Blackmagic Film Gen 5. Now let's adjust the exposure. I'm going to select the Kodak Vision 3 50D as the film stock emulation. This will serve as a good foundation for us to begin with. After this, let's work on the white balance. We can shift this image towards a slightly cooler color temperature and add a subtle green undertone to it. I want some additional saturation here, but instead of increasing standard saturation, let's increase it with the filmic saturation. That's going to make the colors a little more dense while maintaining that natural film-like quality. Now let's reduce the contrast slightly, and this feels good. Here's something important to notice. If we increase the contrast, the tonality of the colors shift. We'll see more tonal separation, more of a split tone effect. But if we reduce the contrast, we get a more monochromatic look, which is exactly what we want. Contrast and saturation go hand in hand. Let's also pull back the highlights just a bit. This is looking good. A little bump to the film saturation would be nice, and an increase of the density as well. Now, there's a chance that this is a little darker than what the cinematographer was originally aiming for, but keep in mind, you can always compensate for that using the exposure slider. For now, let's continue playing around with this look. We're going to use the style slider here, shifting it towards the left adds a bit of a retro touch. If you shift it towards the right, you'll notice it adds a more modern touch. So we'll shift it slightly towards the left for a vintage feel. Let's add another node. What I'm going for here is an additional adjustment using the color wheels in log mode and subtly adjusting the shadows. We're going to pull the shadows slightly away from their current tone to add some separation. Let's call the first node Filmverse and the second node Adjustment. As a final touch, let's lift the highlights just a bit. And there we have our look. Let's save this as our hero grade and apply it to the next shot. Now, of course, this shot is running a bit too cool compared to where we'd actually want it, so I'll slide the temperature slider towards warm and add a touch of magenta. Let's also see if adjusting the skin saturation does some good stuff for us here. All right, that seems good. Let's increase the warmth just a bit. Before we finalize this shot, I'm going to make a minor adjustment. The blue here is coming off pretty strong, so if we select everything that is blue and reduce the saturation, yeah, that's more like it. And although the image is looking maybe a bit flat now, we're gonna increase the contrast slightly. Yeah, good. Let's add a serial node and call it highlight control. We're gonna go into the log wheels here and gently nudge down the highlights. Yeah, pull them down just a little bit. Let's grab a still from this. Now let's apply our first grade to the next shot. And this already is looking great. What I'm gonna do is adjust the tint and temperature sliders just a bit, pull it a bit away from magenta. Again, if we add extreme highlights, the whole tonality and color changes, so we're gonna reduce that a bit. Let's play around with the contrast. If we increase the contrast, you'll see the whole color shifts and becomes more split toned. And that split pushes the image to have more separation between what the tone is in the highlights versus the shadows. I like it somewhere around here. Let's increase the highlights just a bit and play around until we find the right balance. This looks good. Let's grab another still. Just as an experiment, let's see what we could achieve with the default settings in Filmverse Arsenal. So let's do a quick 500T look with minimal adjustments. Yeah, let's adjust the temp and the temperature sliders. Yeah, this is what classic film emulation looks like. It looks great. It retains a lot of those classic film characteristics. Now, let's apply our custom look to this shot as well, just to experiment and see what it looks like. Let's reduce the temperature and shift the tint a little towards magenta. This looks pretty good. If you compare this look with our classic 500T emulation side by side, these are two vastly different looks, and each has their own use case. It's not about one being better than the other. It all depends on what your story needs. Moving on to the next shot, let's apply our look. And it already looks pretty good. We're gonna increase the exposure just a bit, reduce the contrast. We play around with a few things here, increase the shadows. Yeah, this is looking good. Let's squeeze the contrast just a bit more. Moving to the next shot, let's apply the grade, and already looks pretty good. I'm just going to increase the exposure on this one, and that's it. Super simple. On to the next shot. Let's apply the grade and pick a still from here because it seems like it's the same environment. I'm going to decrease the contrast, and I think this looks good. I'm just going to play around with the tint slider a bit, maybe adjust the skin saturation, red density. Yeah, there we go. I think this looks good. Moving on to our last shot, let's apply the 500T emulation just for fun and see how it looks. We can play around with this. Maybe select a warmer print. This looks good. Now let's come back and see how this looks with the custom look we created. I like it. It's got that older film vibe. I'm going to adjust the temperature a little bit warmer, work with the highlights, maybe increase the shadows, and maybe increase the exposure just a little bit. This looks good. This is one of just many ways to go about creating looks using Filmverse Arsenal. Now let's work on the texture. We're going to add this at the timeline level, so let's drop the DCTL in and start with the first shot. Let's select Texture Type A. Type A seems to have a lot of fans because it's fast and the halation looks good. We can see that it works pretty well across our footage. But for this one, I'm going to demo Texture Type B because it's a little more subtle and the halation renders in a different way that I like better for this piece. Do you see the way that it blends between the edges and subjects? It just feels a little more natural to my eye. Let's select the 16mm grain. One additional thing I like to do with a lot of digital footage is add a slight bit of softening right before the texture node. This helps the grain fit and feel more integrated with the grain particles. You're going to lose a little bit of detail, but that's the whole point. If you're going back and emulating those analog characteristics, it's a good practice to get rid of some of that video sharpness from digital cameras. I like it. And there we go. That's our workflow for using Filmverse Arsenal to help us create excellent film emulation looks in DaVinci Resolve. Experiment with these techniques and find out what works best for your story. And that's it for this video. Subscribe for more educational videos on the Filmverse plugin.